Welcome to We Are Old, Get Over It, the podcast where we celebrate the wisdom of age and maybe a little grumbling too. Our guests dive into topics that matter most to us, from navigating the digital world to embracing new adventures and the challenges that hold us back. Join me for about 30 minutes of insightful conversations, honest reflections, and a whole lot of get over it attitude. So let's get started. Welcome to We Are Old, Get Over It. And as usual, I have a lot of laughs before recording with my guests. And today, my guest is Amanda Bruns. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Your last name? Bruns. Okay, I apologize. I never asked you that.
It's very German.
And we have an interesting subject today to discuss, and I call it the rise of cannabis beverages. It's something I didn't know existed until about 2 months ago when one of my friends came to visit, and he enlightened me. And then I felt that this is something that other seniors should be enlightened about. And Amanda is going to give some information about herself, and then we're going to give you some information about these beverages. And you are going to hear more and more about them as time goes on. So, Amanda, I'm turning it over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ken. I'm very, very excited to be here. Very excited to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is cannabis-infused beverages. I am the founder of the beverage consulting firm Ale Advised. I specialize mostly in beer and hemp-derived THC beverages, which is why I'm here today. But I am super excited to kind of bridge that knowledge gap, because this is a really exciting beverage. It's a good alcohol alternative, or just a wellness drink if you're talking about CBD products. So, like I said, just super excited to be here.
Okay, so first of all, tell me how this whole thing arrived, because I understand that it's been about a year since it came on the market, since these came on the market. How did that happen? And explain what the beverages, what those ingredients are that are in the beverages.
Yeah, so they have been around longer, but they've really started to hit their stride in the past couple of years. Like as I mentioned, it's kind of a good alcohol alternative. So for the crowd that is either sober curious, or just doesn't want to drink alcohol as much as they previously did, that was a good way for them to still feel kind of that buzz, that relaxation, get those social aspects without necessarily having to get it from alcohol. So I credit a lot of that non-alcoholic movement with the rise of cannabis beverages. But THC has been around, I mean, if you really look at it, especially hemp, you're looking at like ancient Chinese writings that mention it. So this has been around for a very long time. This is a product that in different forms has been around. And, obviously, a lot of people used to just smoke THC, but a lot of people have been asking for different mediums to try it, to imbibe. And not only that, but they're wanting different effects from these products, right? Not everyone's out there trying to get blazed. Some people are wanting it for, like I said, the social aspect, the pain relief, or just having that alternative. So I would say that's kind of the reason that these are really gaining momentum now, is because people are seeing that there are different alternatives, there are different effects, and more people are interested in investing in that, doing it right, and bringing it to market.
Okay. Now, there are different companies that are putting out these beverages right now. I was reading, and you're going to have more information than I have, that the shift seems to be from companies that were actually in the marijuana and hemp businesses coming out and creating these beverages to now many alcoholic companies, such as beer companies, have decided this is something that they should really be getting involved in because it's an alternative to having a beer drink. Yet you haven't been seeing this at bars, where you walk into a bar and you can order a Guinness or a Budweiser or whatever other kind of beer you would want, and then also say, I'm interested in a spritzer, because there are a lot of them, these beverages that are a spritzer as a form. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so in certain states you are able to do that. And it is increasing, especially with safety regulations and people exploring what those options are. I will say, however, that when you imbibe in a THC product, especially if you are going with the THC route and not the CBD route, which will not give you those high effects. If you're going with a THC drink that will, anytime that you mix products, especially with alcohol, there is a risk of becoming what's called crossfaded, which is poses some risk. I don't want to go so far as to say dangerous, although it can be, especially if you're really imbibing in both. But most establishments don't want to take that risk. A lot of states don't want to take that risk. So like legal wise, it's just not there. It's not present to even be able to be considered by bar owners. Brewery owners have and tap room owners have a little bit more wiggle room, especially legislatively, because they're already brewing these products. They're not just a bar, they're a tap room, they're a more controlled environment. Again, it varies state by state, which obviously poses some concerns to the consumer when you're trying to keep up with what is going on, what's available in your state, and when you travel, what's available. But we are seeing that more bars are able to take that risk as legislation comes out to let them do so.
Okay. So, how I found out about it, as I had mentioned, is I'd gone to a, well, Total Wine in particular, which is, I presume, all over the country. Uh, and when I went there with my friend, and I was just amazed that there was an entire section of the store that of maybe 20 or 30 feet long in an aisle, from the floor to about 6 feet or 7 feet high. There were choices, and I didn't know about any of this. And I think this is probably where most of the people that are now trying the beverages are getting them. That they're not going to a bar because it's not available. There's legal questions about that, and legislative issues about it. But there obviously doesn't seem to be anything stopping liquor stores from having it, which is interesting. And then even you can, I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can actually go online and actually buy direct from some of these companies and they'll send it to you. Is that true?
Yes. So again, unfortunately, it's state by state. So there's very few blanket statements that can be made about these products. CBD, again, because it does not elicit those high effects, is more readily available in more spaces. But most states are at least considering, if they haven't already implemented, an allowance for liquor stores, because they do put it along the same lines as alcoholic beverages, and they kind of look at those same regulations. Again, it really does vary state to state, and it's ever changing. So we could definitely see a lot of changes in the market, and probably will in the next coming years, even in the next coming months. But yes, you can see these, like you said, in liquor stores, and even in some states, gas stations, grocery stores. And it also depends on what the product is. There's CBD products, which, like I mentioned before, do not elicit the high. They're mostly considered a wellness or a alternative functional beverage. And those, because it does not have those effects, legally can be found in a lot more places. Then there's hemp derived THC beverages, which are considered lower dose. These are not the 50, 100 milligrams typically that you would see in marijuana infused THC beverages. So the marijuana drinks are a little bit more heavily regulated because, again, those are heavy hitters. And the hemp derived beverages, a lot of states are starting to consider those as being kind of a good alternative beverage. So those are the ones that you're starting to see in, like, kind of those approachable spaces, right? Like liquor stores right alongside your beers, in your gas stations, in your tap rooms, things like that.
Interesting. So, One of the regulations, of course, almost everywhere is the same as it would be with liquor. In most states, I presume it's 21 to buy liquor. Sometimes it's a lower to buy beer. And again, it may be the restrictions in each state will be a little bit different. And one of the things that we were talking about here is the difference between the amount of hemp product versus marijuana product. I don't know if that's the right term to use. Uh, is significant. And my friend who took me to the first time, and he said, "Well, don't get anything over 5 milligrams." Explain the difference of the effects of these beverages. I kind of call it the same as the difference between beer and wine and vodka. Okay, that the vodka side are the stronger drinks, the alcoholic side, that side, and yet the wine is very mild, and so is beer. Am I correct in that assumption, in that analogy?
That's a good place to start. I would say that it's not always a blanket statement. But yes, so if you're going with the CBD products, obviously since those don't have the high effects, those are very mild in comparison. And then when you go up to the hemp products, those do tend to be anywhere from the 2 to 2.5 milligrams to like the 10 plus ish range. Now, those, just to be really clear, those are in like milligrams, those are not in like percentage like in alcohol. So a 10% like beer versus a 10 milligram drink may hit someone differently. So I caution anyone that's like, oh, I can drink high level beers, high alc beers all day from starting with a 10 milligram like THC beverage. It's not going to hit you the same. And until you know, we kind of have the phrase in the industry, go low, start slow, or
Say that
start low, go
again.
slow. Start low, go slow.
Okay.
So you want to start with, and it doesn't have to be the lowest dosage that you can find, but it does need to be five or less, is my recommendation to everyone. And then just sip on it. These do tend to have a faster onset because of the way that the body can digest them. So we're looking 15 to 20 minutes, but that's not the case for every single person. And these effects can last up to around 3 hours. Again, though, it really depends on the person. So if you're drinking one of these beverages and in 15 minutes you don't feel it, that doesn't mean that you should go pound another one, because you are going to feel the effects and they may be compounded. So you do need to be kind of careful with that. As a side note, just so everyone knows what we're talking about when I mention all of these beverages, these all come from the cannabis sativa plant, so we are all talking about the same source. It's just that what we're pulling from that is different. So you're pulling CBD and THC from these plants. Again, the CBD does not elicit those highs, whereas the THC does. And then from that, depending on the percentage by dry weight, which we're not going to get into, I'm not going to get too technical, but that's kind of what determines hemp, which is, like I said, lower, and then marijuana, which tends to be much higher. And so the way I usually try to explain it to people is, think about dogs, right? Like that's all the cannabis plant. But then you can have a Chihuahua and then a Great Dane. Those are kind of the differences I think of, as hemp versus marijuana, right? Like they can still bite, you can still have those effects, but you're probably going to get a harder bite from Great Dane. So I love Great
Okay.
Dane, for the record.
Okay. One of the most important things that you and I should discuss is the fact that we're not recommending anything.
Correct.
What we're doing is we're giving you information. We're trying to give seniors information about something that they may find can be medically helpful to them, or emotionally helpful to them, or just calming, or just something else that they could do if they don't like beer, or they don't like wine, or even if they like both of those things. This is another choice. But probably the most important thing is a warning: you don't get in a car and drive. You still have to behave yourself and understand what action you're taking. So it should be no different than drinking alcohol and trying to drive. And this is a very important thing because there are going to be issues about this somewhere. I haven't heard of any recently or at all, actually, but it's going to happen. And I just want to make sure that people are aware that there is a danger of mixing this with driving, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime that you have a product that does anything to the body and the mind, it runs risks. Now, thankfully, we have seen very, very few THC even related crashes, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other issues. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. And that's kind of the other reason, too, why I very much recommend know how it affects your body, know when it affects your body, and then don't go mixing it with like alcohol products. There are a lot of products that now offer these with like mixed with caffeine, and I also very much I'm not saying I warn against them, but absolutely know your tolerance, know how it affects your body before you try to do anything like driving, like operating any sort of machinery, you know, the standard warnings. um and honestly, too, just even going out in public, like I would suggest trying these. If you're going to try it in public, try it with people you trust. If you're going to try it in private, also with people that you trust, because these can elicit paranoia in some people. This can elicit um, drowsiness in some people, or it could just elicit like a not great feeling. It may make you nauseous or a little bit dizzy. Now, these products can also do the opposite, but again, you just want to be very, very careful with getting started on these, just like with any new product. Um, and if you're taking any medications, obviously, you know, talk to your doctor before you start imbibing in these. In places that these are legal, these are conversations that need to be happening. You know, I like that this taboo is being lifted. You know, it's no longer the idea of stoner culture, right? Where everyone's just getting blazed no matter what. Like there are other avenues. So don't be afraid to have these conversations. You know, if your doctor's asking you how many beers a week do you drink, this is also a good time to bring up THC beverages of, well, I'd like to try this, but with my medications, are there any side effects? Is there anything that I need to be aware of? With my sleep schedule, is there a certain time that I should try these? It's not as regimented as it sounds. There is a lot of freedom with these drinks, but again, until you know how your body reacts, how your mind reacts, and especially any medications react, again, you want to start low, you want to go slow, and you want to talk to people that you trust, like your doctor. If you're seeing a therapist, talk to them, and be around people that you love the first couple of times, just in case things do go a little bit south. But these are beverages that can make you feel good. These are beverages that can do a lot of beneficial things if respected. You know, just respect them like you would alcohol or any other beverage.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of warnings, probably the most warnings I've ever given on one of my podcasts, but that's a good thing. Tell me that also, one thing I noticed when I went to the store is that they've kind of conformed to the same kind of can. They all have a thin aluminum can and they're all about 12 ounces as if it was a soda, but they're thin and taller. Is that correct? Is that kind of like something that they decided in the industry?
Not necessarily. I mean, I will say that that is the packaging that seems to be most common. A lot of the packaging choices does come down to not only state regulations, but just what makes sense with everyone that the brand is working with. So those do tend to not only be more functional as far as what works for the brand, but it also kind of mimics that idea of a seltzer or a Red Bull or you know other energy drinks or other drinks that you might be used to getting at the grocery store, at a tap room, things like that. Especially for those that typically do drink the seltzers or the ready to drink cocktails, that is something that they see that can and they go, oh, I am already familiar with other things that look like that, and it does tend to make it a little bit more approachable. So some of this is what works best for the brands as far as their suppliers and things like that, and some of this is intentional choices of just kind of paralleling what's already on the market.
Okay, I have another question. The science of infusion. What does that mean? How do they infuse it, and why does it seem that they're always like copying uh, mixed drinks, like a margarita blend or a spritzer or something like that? Could you explain that to the audience?
Yeah. So I won't get too technical because this is a topic that I just love to chat about. But THC in itself is hydrophobic, so it does not mix well with water, which is a problem if you're wanting to drink it. So what needs to happen is an emulsion needs to be created. And that's usually through a process called nanoemulsification, but there are other processes to do that. That's usually just what drinks use. And what that does is it allows that THC to be broken down and mixed with things that do make it soluble in water. This is if you get it from a trusted source, which most brands are trying to be good players, so they are sourcing it well. And that is kind of on the brands to make sure that they are getting quality, that it's mixed well, things like that. But if everyone does their jobs right, then that makes it soluble throughout the liquid. One thing that you do have to kind of watch out for, especially if it's your first time, is that with some cans, if that emulsification isn't just right, it could collect kind of all in one spot. So you could be getting a very heavy-handed sip. Um, Now, I don't say that to scare anybody, but again, that is one of the reasons that I don't suggest that you just chug it, especially if it's the first time that you've tried one. But that is why these brands try to work so well with these emulsification companies, and they use brands that they or companies that they trust with these brands, because that will allow it to become soluble in the beverage, and then they can do a lot of different things with it. Like you said, they can kind of make those mocktails, they can make the seltzers. Like at that point, you just get innovative, right? You just get fun. And a lot of the reason that a lot of these companies are looking at those kind of innovations beyond just the seltzers and things like that, or even with the seltzers, but trying to elevate them, is because there are so many things in the market, alcoholic wise and non alcoholic, that people enjoy. And they want to enjoy these while also enjoying the THC. So if you're a margarita fan, kind of like you mentioned, and you're like, man, I could really go for one, but I don't really feel like drinking alcohol today. I don't want those effects. I don't I just don't feel like it. Or maybe like we said earlier, maybe you're trying to be a little bit more sober. Maybe alcohol just is not a choice you need to be making. You can make these THC like options and choices while still getting those margarita flavors. So that's why a lot of these brands are trying to make it approachable. They're trying to make it as a good alternative option. Even a couple of years ago, there were less options on the market. And so I think as people made these choices, as people saw that, oh, this is something people want, more choices became available. And honestly, I think more choices is usually a good thing. It allows for more people to try these products and not have to only choose A, B, or C. You can have the THC seltzers that you like. You can have the THC infused margaritas, non-alcoholic margaritas, I should state. You can have kind of those coffee flavors. You can do a lot of different things, and so that's why a lot of those brands are making that choices, so that those choices are then things that consumers can make for themselves.
Let's talk about the demographics of the people that are currently uh, purchasing these products. Uh, Obviously, you have to be of a certain age. Let's say 21, which is more the
Yes,
norm in
21
most
plus.
parts of the country. So from 21 on, which groups are is it appealing to the most? Do you think, based on
Yeah,
your experience?
it's really interesting because it is appealing to a very wide net. But within that net, we're finding that usually people, and data does change depending on what source you're looking at, because we do need longer studies. But what we're seeing by and large in general is that from that 21 to around 30 mark, a lot of people are choosing to do these beverages that are the mocktails, or the marijuana infused, the hemp infused, whereas 30, 35 plus, like all the way through end of life, that demographic tends to be choosing either the lower dose hemp or CBD. Again, we need more studies in the market, but that does seem to be by and large what people are going towards. And it's just kind of where you are in life. Like I'm at the point where I don't need 100 milligrams, and there are people out there that want it, and that's great. I want a nice relaxing beverage when I'm out with my friends or when I am at home where maybe my back hurts and I just want to relax. And so I'll choose a hemp beverage or a CBD product. So I think a lot of people are starting to have that mindset of choosing wellness, in everything that they do. Right? We're getting older. We need to start really thinking about taking care of ourselves, and some of that is then in our beverage choices.
I One of the things I want to say is, for research purposes only, when I tried these beverages, just a couple of them, uh, I found that the effect on me was very mellowing. Now, I'm not saying that I've used a lot of marijuana, but I found that it had given me kind of the best calming feeling I have. That it represents a similar feeling that I had with a very nice marijuana. Not the things where there was too much and somebody gave me a brownie and it knocked me out. It was just a very mellowing effect. But of course, remember, I've stuck to my 5 milligrams. So, which is kind of, I need the mellowing basically in my life because I'm not so mellow all the time. Okay. So again, I just want to warn people that these are the things that they should be very careful about using, but start small and then see what you feel most comfortable with. Do you agree?
I do. Yeah, I mean, and like you said, there's a lot of warnings with these products, but mostly because they're new. They're new, and it's something that is not as approachable or is understood by a lot of people. So anytime there is something new, you just want to say, yes, there are some great things, but like you said, we need to go slow. We need to see what works for each individual. So yeah, this can be very relaxing. In some people it can help with sleep, in some people it can help with anxiety, in some people it can help with pain relief. It just depends on the product and it depends on the person. So while there are some great benefits to these drinks, like you said, like you like to stick with your 5 milligrams, you found that sweet spot. And that's something I encourage people to do, is don't be afraid of these drinks by any means. They can be a wonderful addition or alternative to your food and beverage lifestyle. But again, as with anything new, you just want to make sure that you know exactly how it works for you and what works for you. And there are a lot of products out there that are they're adding things to these products, not just like the mocktails and things, but vitamins and adaptogens and things like that. So again, you just also want to be careful of the ingredients to make sure you're not allergic to the ingredients, let alone the THC.
Great. Okay. Is there anything that we've left out in our brief conversation that we you think we should talk about or you would like to mention?
I mean, I think that these products are a great alternative. I'm kind of the poster child for hemp and CBD beverages. I was never one that could smoke marijuana. It made me dizzy. It brought out vertigo that I had as a child, and so I had no interest. I did not understand why people wanted to smoke, do edibles, let alone drink these things. When I finally got the nerve to try a beverage, I didn't have those side effects. Not saying that the next person wouldn't, but I will say that I didn't have those negative side effects. I finally understood why people would imbibe in things like this. So I also just want to encourage people not to be scared of these products. If you've had a bad interaction with marijuana before, if you grew up like I grew up near the Bible Belt, like, marijuana was devil's lettuce, so if you're if you grew up with these taboos and things like that, I just don't want people to be scared. Be smart, be educated, know how it works with your body, but don't be scared to imbibe in these just because you think that they're bad, or you think that it's stoner related, or you had a bad marijuana trip. Like, again, be slow and intentional with these, but these can be a great alternative. These can be a great addition to your lifestyle. And there's so many options, like I said, there's coffee, um or infused coffees. There's some that you can put into like other drinks, like little squeeze packages, or that you could put in just water in drinks. So get curious, be safe about it, be smart about it, but don't be afraid of these products.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. The other thing is, do you have a website that people could go to get more information? And what would that be?
Yeah, I do. It's ale advised, advised.com, or you can get a hold of me at aleadvised@gmail.com.
Okay, great. Can we put that information on our website?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so I really thank you for this interview. It's a subject that I didn't know about 2 months ago. And I think there are many people out there that said, "What the heck are you guys talking about?" So we've taught people things, and I thank you again for coming here and speaking to me. I know here is just over the internet, but speaking with me about this, and maybe some future time when more is happening, we could talk about it again. So if you just hang with me a few moments, I'd like to end with a quote. And I had a really hard time coming up with one quote for this. So I came up with 3 quotes, all from different fields. So bear with me, folks, while I read you these 3 quotes. And the first one is, when you smoke an herb, it reveals you to yourself. And that's from Bob Marley. Now, if you're old enough, you know who he is. Okay.
Absolutely.
The next quote is, there's a difference between marijuana and alcohol. You don't go out and drive under the influence of marijuana. You don't get belligerent under marijuana. You don't get stupid under marijuana. That's from Tommy Chong, from Cheech and Chong.
He would know.
He would know. I almost have the nerve to call him up and ask him what he thinks about these beverages. Maybe you have a contact for me. Okay. The last one is from someone who's actually in that business. Cannabis beverages are not just a trend. They're a way to bring a more sophisticated, subtle experience to those who want the effects of cannabis without smoking or vaping. And that's from a man called David Tran, who's CEO of Cann, CANN, which is a cannabis beverage company. So I went to the source, and I went to 2 people who know something about marijuana. And with that, if it's okay with you, we're going to end this podcast. Okay?
Thank you so much for having me, Ken. It was a blast.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Okay, so hang in there for the next episode, which will drop next week. I don't know what it is yet. We will surprise you. And again, my thanks to Amanda for taking her time out of her busy schedule and enlightening us about this new product.
Cheers, Ken.
And that concludes this episode of We Are Old, Get Over It. Thanks for joining me. I hope you found our conversation both insightful and entertaining. Remember, age is a journey, not a destination. So embrace the wrinkles, the forgetfulness, and the occasional tech frustrations with a good dose of get over it attitude. Until next time, keep laughing, keep learning, and keep getting over it. Ken out.